On the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, lots to talk about. I know you were worried about a pullout from the Iran deal, that possibly it would destabilize the region. Do you have concerns at all about the U.S. now embassies opening in Jerusalem on Monday as all this unfolds?
Well, first of all, just to comment on the previous family, it's a terrible situation that they face, and perhaps something good can come of all of this. But my real concern is that the president is kicked over the anthill, and there are just so many things that are now scurrying around and likely to cause trouble. Certainly the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem is already causing concern throughout the entire regions. There are demonstrations underway. We're going to have to send more Marines into that area to protect that embassy. So it's going to be a very, very difficult week out ahead as the embassy opens and as that effect of that finds its way through the political atmosphere, the charged political atmosphere of the Middle East. With regard to Iran, wow. I'm not so sure that America has much leverage left here. We know that Iran is scurrying around, going to China and Russia and to the European countries, our former allies in the effort to stop Iran from building a nuclear weapon. They are there to try to cut a separate deal, basically how they might be able to have those countries not abide by the American sanctions. So now we have a situation where Iran is purposely trying to divide our previous allies on this matter. If they're at all successful, and there's some indication that they might be, because we know that Germany and France are very, very concerned about the economic impacts of what President Trump has done.
Well, they're concerned about the economic impacts, but they're also, I think, concerned about the issue which was the reason for the deal in the first place, which is the nuclear development. And I know there was the concern initially that pulling out the deal would result in Iran immediately firing back up its nuclear program. And while they have made a lot of threats in that regard, they've also indicated they're committed to staying in the deal as long as the other countries who signed the deal remain committed. So that's another way to look at it, right?
Well, there are many, many ways to look at it. That's why I say kicked over the anthill, and we don't know what's going to come of all this. We do know that Iran is pursuing two avenues. One, the first one I described, which is to try to do a separate deal where they can continue to have their economic advantage in exchange for holding on to the nuclear deal.
Can I stop you there for just 1 second, because I want to get some clarity. When you say they're working on a separate deal, is that your understanding? Do you have additional information? Because the way I had read it was that they're working on keeping the current deal as is with the remaining countries, and that the U.S. has gone its own way.
That's exactly right. We're saying the same thing in two different ways, and perhaps you said it more clearly than I did. The other thing is the other thing that you said, which is that Iran has threatened at the very highest level of their military that if they're not able to have a separate deal or to be able to have the economic advantages that the JCPOA, the Iranian deal, gave them, then they will pursue the nuclear weapons. And we have every reason to believe that they are perfectly capable of doing that once they are free of the sanctions and of the very oppressive review by the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency's constant observation of what they're doing. So they throw the watchdogs out of the country and then pursue their nuclear ambitions once again. Any way you look at it, the United States has been put into a very difficult situation here. We could have, and this is what I suggested for the president that he ought to do, is to maintain the existing nuclear deal with Iran and pursue efforts to rein in the terrorism as well as the missiles, all of which could have been done with the sanctions that he has been given by Congress, and to put more pressure on Iran.
I realize that's what you had advocated for, but that now didn't happen. We'll see where it goes next. But real quick, before I let you go, I want to ask you, looking forward now, how this pullout of the Iran deal could impact the negotiation with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. How do you see it impacting that?
Well, Well, I think there's two ways, one of which is very much talked about, which is that would North Korea trust the United States going forward, having pulled out of this Iran deal? The second thing, which I think is perhaps much more problematic, is the president has actually set the height of the hurdle. He has said that the Iran nuclear deal, all that it was, which actually it was working, it was insufficient.
Right.
Now, what would be sufficient in North Korea? Total dismantlement of all of their nuclear enterprise, all of their missile systems, everything that he said was insufficient in the Iran deal. If that's the hurdle, this is going to be a very long and very, very complex, and perhaps, at the end of the day, not a successful negotiation. So I'm concerned about what it actually is that the president must accomplish, since he has set such a very high hurdle for the Iran deal.
Well, you could argue that he has been very upfront about that being the hurdle. The fact that Kim Jong-un is still willing to meet, is that potentially a good thing, that he has set the bar that high, and Kim Jong-un knows that going into this meeting? Congressman John Garamendi.
We will find out.
There's so much more we could talk about. I'm so glad you're on our show this afternoon. We'll have you back. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Coming up, no apology, but now an explanation. What CNN is just learning about the fallout from a White House aide's insensitive